One brief moment on the balcony, on the 13th of June, 2026, this single striking photo of Catherine and James captures the calm, deeply steady presence of the youth, an 18-year-old in a sharp black suit standing tall beside the future Queen of England, whispering a quiet joke that makes her laugh genuinely, completely without pretense. Have you ever wondered who is quietly healing those deep, raw wounds Prince Harry left behind in London? The world has grown weary and accustomed to the loud, aggressive spin of Hollywood public relations, leaving many to question if the royal household can ever find a real counterweight to this highly corrosive brand of modern celebrity. But the answer, it turns out, does not come from a defensive statement issued by palace courtiers, nor through any retaliatory media campaign. Instead, it comes directly from the quiet power of silence, embodied beautifully by a young man who, until very recently, could walk the historic lawns of Windsor completely unnoticed by the global press. The big occasion was Trooping the Colour 2026, the grand, annual, and meticulously planned show of military pride that celebrates the official birthday of the British sovereign. To any casual observer, the whole event was a familiar sea of bright crimson tunics, towering bearskin hats, and the marching precision of the household division. But for seasoned royal watchers, especially those who look at the British monarchy with a critical, objective eye toward its long-term institutional survival, the true, unfolding narrative of the day took place, not down on the Horse Guards parade, but high on the iconic balcony of Buckingham Palace. It was that specific moment when the working senior members of the royal family stepped out through the tall French doors to watch the breathtaking flypast of the Royal Air Force. Because Prince William, the Prince of Wales himself, was busy on the ground below, performing the demanding, traditional riding duties of the parade in his heavy ceremonial uniform, the physical arrangement of the royal balcony required a major, highly visible shift. Standing right at the absolute centre of that space, firmly anchoring the visual power of the crown, was Catherine, the elegant Princess of Wales, flanked closely by her three young children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and little Prince Louis. This formed the definitive, powerful image of the immediate line of succession, a deep reminder of the royal future. Yet, it was the tall figure standing right next to her, blending so naturally into the inner circle of the family, that sparked a sudden wave of global fascination. Right there, standing shoulder to shoulder with the Princess of Wales, was James Alexander Philip Theo Mountbatten Windsor, the Earl of Wessex. Having celebrated his major 18th birthday on the 17th of December 2025, this marked his very first formal state appearance as a grown legal adult among the highest tier of the royal family. The sheer visual impact of his presence was both immediate and striking. Dressed in an impeccably sharp, classic black morning suit paired with a light waistcoat and a clean, traditional tie, young James stood with a commanding and towering stature that created a striking, fascinating visual contrast right next to the elegant, slender frame of the Princess of Wales. For an audience used to seeing young James as a shy, quiet, and heavily shielded child walking behind his parents at Sandringham or Windsor, his sudden transformation into a poised, highly self-assured young man was absolutely extraordinary. He did not merely occupy an empty spot on that balcony, he dominated it with an easy, natural dignity that felt closely tied to an older, far more stoic era of royal duty. As the loud, thunderous roar of the jet aircraft split the London sky, painting the clouds in bold streaks of red, white, and deep blue, the global press corps captured several candid, stunning photos that went far beyond the boundaries of normal event reporting. These revealing images did not show a stiff, nervous teenager feeling overwhelmed by the intense gaze of a global audience. Instead, they showed a young man entirely at ease, leaning down slightly to enjoy a warm, unscripted chat with his aunt, the Princess of Wales. The two were photographed sharing an honest moment of bright, genuine, and unforced laughter. Their body language showed a deep, organic mutual trust and a quiet understanding that simply cannot be faked for the benefit of any camera lens. For Catherine, whose public life has always been defined by incredible poise under massive personal and institutional pressure, the relaxed, easy joy visible in her interaction with James spoke absolute volumes. And for James, his measured, highly respectful manner toward the future Queen Consort showed a maturity that easily exceeds his 18 years. It was a display of classic, perfect courtly etiquette, yet entirely stripped of the cold, stiff distance that often defines state events. This one, defining photograph from Trooping the Colour, 2026, has been quickly read by global constitutional experts and key royal biographers as the most definitive public sign of the core human strength supporting this new Carolinian era. For years now, the British public has watched King Charles III and the Prince of Wales push a brutal, uncompromising policy to streamline the entire monarchy. This cold pruning was meant to protect the crown from angry taxpayer criticism, but it carried a massive risk. It left the core royal family looking incredibly isolated, especially after the chaotic departure of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and the forced banishment of the Duke of York from public life. William has been cold and deliberate about tightening court rules, quietly erasing the public presence and perceived power of those non-working, non-essential branches of the wider royal family tree, including extended step relations and those distant cousins whose messy private lives risk sparking unwanted, distracting tabloid headlines. Right in the middle of this ruthless power shift, seeing Catherine and young James standing side by side right at the centre of the balcony makes things crystal clear. It shows the entire world that the Edinburgh branch, and specifically the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh themselves, along with their young son James, have now been permanently elevated as the most trusted and essential allies to the direct line of succession. That genuine warmth we saw on the balcony was not some sudden act born out of political panic. Instead, it is the beautiful growth of a deep, lifelong bond that Catherine has quietly nurtured behind closed palace doors. Well before James ever stepped into the public eye as a young man, the Princess of Wales kept up an incredibly close, loving relationship with both of Prince Edward's children, Lady Louise and young James. Throughout their early childhood, when the intense and often predatory glare of the global press made those big family gatherings feel incredibly stressful, people frequently saw Catherine stepping in to quietly guide them. Since she had to survive that massive, overnight leap from an ordinary private citizen to the most watched woman on earth herself, Catherine had a deep, empathetic understanding of exactly what it felt like to grow up under that heavy royal microscope. She spent plenty of time talking with James, giving him quiet reassurances and teaching him how to keep his composure and find his footing in front of the cameras. Today, that long investment of time and maternal care has paid off beautifully. As Catherine stands at the absolute centre of the monarchy, balancing heavy state duties with her own role as a mother, James has grown from a sheltered nephew into an incredibly steady, highly reliable presence. He is a young man whose sharp instinct for discretion and quiet dignity makes him the ultimate backup player for a royal family struggling to survive in a rapidly changing world. That strategic placement of James, the Earl of Wessex, on the Buckingham Palace balcony during Trooping the Colour 2026 was certainly no accident at all. In the deeply coded world of the British royal family, standing right next to the future, Queen Consort is the ultimate sign of absolute institutional trust and high family status. While Prince William carried out his formal duties on the parade ground below, Catherine stood tall as the visual anchor for the entire crown, and her very deliberate decision to place James directly by her side sent a powerful, unmistakable message across the entire global stage. This was the official public debut of a new, highly exclusive inner circle, a carefully chosen network of people built to hold up the monarchy through its most turbulent, changing era. For years, royal watchers have constantly wondered how the family would survive this massive, painful shortage of prominent, reliable figures after the major shake-up under King Charles III and the Prince of Wales. The answer was right there in that one picture. This is a powerful partnership built not on hollow public relations, but on shared values, quiet, unbreakable loyalty, and a deep dedication to protecting the future of the crown. The deep sense of comfort between Catherine and James as they spoke on the balcony tells a much bigger story than simple royal etiquette. The Princess of Wales has actually found a real kindred spirit in the Edinburgh side of the royal family, especially through her close, trusting bond with James's mother, Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh. These two women have always been each other's most loyal supporters inside those palace walls. We saw that beautiful connection just days before during the Garter Day service of 2026, where people spotted them sharing a moment of perfectly matched, synchronized curtsies to the king. That deep generational friendship between the mothers has paved the way for a very natural, easy bond between their children too. And as Catherine has carried her own heavy responsibilities, she has constantly kept a highly protective maternal wing wrapped around James. All of that long-term emotional support was incredibly obvious during the big fly-past, where people spotted Catherine giving quiet nods of warm encouragement and chatting playfully with her young nephew. When a young guy finally steps out on the global stage as a legal adult for the very first time, having the future queen right beside him as a steady, reassuring presence is completely invaluable. And James responded with body language that showed absolute courtly respect, attentive, poised, and totally free of that smug self-importance we so often see with rich young kids in the spotlight. This deliberate move, this highly public show of unity, is a crucial piece of William and Catherine's long-term master plan for a much leaner monarchy. The Prince of Wales has been absolutely ruthless about his vision for a stripped-back, highly efficient royal household, steadily pushing away the non-working relatives and cutting loose those whose messy private lives threaten to completely overshadow the royal family's actual charitable work. And in this master plan, young James isn't being groomed for some standard, boring full-time desk job. Instead, he is being set up as a high-value secret weapon, a deeply loyal family member who can step right into the public eye with pure class during major moments of national importance. The easy warmth and total lack of drama between James and Catherine is incredibly refreshing to a British public that is completely exhausted by endless royal family feuds. It shows everyone that the long-term future of the House of Windsor is in very safe, highly capable, and amazingly disciplined hands, proving that the strongest ties are built in the quiet spaces of shared duty, not in the noisy, toxic circus of Hollywood-style global celebrity. The fascinating rise of young James, the Earl of Wessex, into the public eye highlights a massive cultural divide that currently stretches right across the Atlantic. For years now, people all over the world, especially the American crowd, have become deeply obsessed with the ultra-slick, media-heavy lifestyle of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle over in California. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex built a whole brand on sharing everything, using explosive primetime TV specials, massive multi-million-dollar streaming deals, and deeply personal tell-all memoirs to air their dirty laundry and control how the world sees them. It is a fast-paced world where screen time means power, and staying in the media spotlight is the only way to keep a massive global brand alive. This exact, noisy version of modern Hollywood fame has somehow become the main yardstick that people use to judge the younger royals. Yet, standing on that famous Buckingham Palace balcony, and honestly, throughout his entire life, James has offered the world a completely different path, a quiet, dignified contrast to that chaotic Hollywood style. He represents an old-school, timeless way of doing things that royal experts like to call the power of silence and the pure dignity of a quiet life. While Harry and Meghan constantly chase the camera lens, James has spent his entire childhood actively hiding from it. This massive divide between their two worlds was never more obvious than back in September 2022. At just 14 years old, the young royal stood vigil right beside the coffin of his beloved grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, inside Westminster Hall. As the world watched the high-stakes, tense drama of the older royals under flashing cameras and global TV screens, James just kept his head completely bowed, his dark suit a quiet picture of real, heartbreaking grief. He never once looked up at the lenses, nor did he try to play the victim or spin the moment for sympathy. His composure during that heavy time of national mourning was total, showing everyone a young man who fully understood that his private heartbreak was far less important than the historic event itself. For the traditional crowd of royal fans, this silent grace is exactly what makes a royal royal, showing that the loudest statements are often made without saying a single word. James becoming this perfect example of class and maturity is no accident. It is the direct result of a parenting masterclass by Prince Edward and Sophie, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh. When the couple tied the knot back in 1999, they made a very smart, calculated decision that would completely shape the future of their kids. Specifically, they chose to skip the grand titles of prince and princess for their kids, even though they had every legal right to them under ancient royal laws. Sophie was very open about this choice, explaining that she and Edward raised their children with a very clear, harsh understanding that they would almost certainly have to get normal jobs and work for a living in the real world. This smart move kept young James far away from those toxic, spoiled fantasies of royal privilege that have ruined so many other younger kids in the family. By stripping away all that heavy pressure of royal expectations, his parents gave him a remarkably normal childhood. This allowed him to focus entirely on his studies at Radley College and grow into his own person, far away from the toxic glare of relentless tabloid gossip. This smart approach to parenting paid off when James finally turned 18 and became an adult. He had the maturity to realize that being royal is about quiet duty and public service, not a cheap celebrity status to be exploited for fame. For him, real privilege means having the chance to serve his country quietly, instead of constantly demanding the spotlight. They raised him to be a regular citizen who deeply respects the monarchy, rather than a bitter public figure trapped by its strict rules. In doing so, Edward and Sophie broke that painful cycle of royal resentment. To anyone watching closely, especially those who still value family stability, responsibility, and emotional strength, the quiet grace of the young Earl of Wessex is incredibly refreshing. He proves that a boy can grow up under the direct glare of the most scrutinized family on the planet and still turn out completely balanced, truly grounded, and a thoroughly polite young man. He shows everyone the real power of holding back. To honestly appreciate how James won this quiet victory, we have to look at the grim history behind his rise, especially what royal authors have called the curse of the younger sibling. Across the recent history of the British royal family, being the younger sibling of the next king or queen has always been a role filled with mental struggles, deep loneliness, and a lack of purpose. The heavy machinery of the royal household is cold and brutally efficient. It pours almost all its money, training, and focus, leaving the younger brothers and sisters to handle a lifetime of intense public attention without any real job or clear purpose. History is full of sad and messy examples of this dynamic in action. Princess Margaret spent her entire life torn between rigid palace rules and her desperate wish for personal freedom, her bright light always hidden by the shadow of her sister's massive throne. Prince Andrew's path ultimately ended in a complete loss of all public affection, while Prince Harry walked away and tore down his entire royal existence, exposing his deep anger at being treated like a simple spare tire or a genetic backup in his tell-all memoir. But this painful historic cycle is exactly what young James has quietly managed to break right before our eyes. He did not face the heavy expectations of his birth with loud complaints like his older relatives did, but with a calm, quiet independence that completely wipes away the usual fears of being the second choice. Instead of looking at his place near the throne as a golden cage or a source of deep anger, James has shown absolutely no interest in power, finding his real strength in his legal freedom to live a private life. This incredible break from royal history only happened because his mother, Duchess Sophie, purposely protected him from the heavy weight of royal expectations from the day he was born. She made it clear he would have to work a normal job, keeping him safe from the bitter pain of ever feeling like second best. He does not see his distance from the throne as some kind of failure or a demotion, mostly because his parents never raised him to crave the spotlight. Having no sense of entitlement has let him completely change what it means to be a modern royal, turning a role that used to cause so much drama into a source of real peace and stability. This beautiful change is made even stronger by the incredibly close bond James shares with his sister. Their close connection is a truly touching example of real family loyalty. James and his big sister, Lady Louise Windsor, share a deep, unbreakable bond that looks a lot like the early days of William and Harry, but their story went in a totally different direction. They both grew up in the quiet safety of Bagshot Park, far away from the madness of London, and both had to deal with the heavy grief of losing their grandparents, Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth, during their difficult teenage years. During those times of deep personal and public sadness, they never looked for public attention or tried to make money. Instead, they pulled together, leaning entirely on each other to get through. Lady Louise has been an amazing role model and guide for her little brother. When she celebrated her 18th birthday in 2021, she faced the exact same choice James did last December. With quiet grace, Louise decided to say no to using her royal titles, choosing to focus on her university classes at St. Andrews, and opting to live as quietly as possible while still showing up to help her family during major state events. Watching his sister handle this tricky balancing act with real dignity and absolutely zero public drama gave young James a perfect guide for his own future. James saw firsthand that a person can respect their grand family heritage without getting trapped in the soul-crushing machinery of modern celebrity. Their quiet, unspoken support for one another has brought a sense of real, unvarnished warmth to the royal family, offering a highly refreshing and deeply comforting alternative to the bitter rivalries that have historically torn the royal palace apart. The strategic long-term planning of the British monarchy under the Prince and Princess of Wales forces us to look way down the road, way past the immediate horizon of upcoming royal events. When Prince William finally takes the crown, he is going to face a very unique institutional hurdle. His own 3 kids, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, will still be pretty young, likely finishing up college or starting out in their military careers, which means they will not be ready to shoulder the heavy burden of full-time official royal duties and overseas tours. At the same time, Prince Harry leaving has left a massive gap in the younger generation of the family, leaving William facing the very real prospect of a lonely and exposed reign at the peak of power. It is within this complicated constitutional setup that the public positioning of young James, the Earl of Wessex, right alongside the Princess of Wales during massive national events, starts to show its true meaning. This is definitely not just a simple display of warm family affection. Instead, it represents a deeply planned, long-term human project for the future. Experienced royal observers are starting to see the Edinburgh branch of the family as the perfect solution to running a much smaller monarchy. By bringing James directly into the core of their public image, Catherine is carefully building a highly trusted inner circle, a highly dedicated shield of completely loyal, dignified, and entirely drama-free family members who can step up for the direct line of succession when things get tough. Both James and his sister Louise are being quietly set up as top-tier backup assets. These are people who do not need the heavy taxpayer funding or the constant PR handling that comes with full-time working royals, yet they have that natural, flawless instinct for palace etiquette needed to step in during moments of major national crisis or celebration. It is a smart administrative move, ensuring that the future king never has to stand entirely alone on the world stage. For the older generation of royal fans around the world, People who have watched the House of Windsor change over many decades, the rise of James brings back a very strong sense of historical déjà vu. There is a very clear and deep connection between the behaviour of the young Earl of Wessex and the lasting legacy of his grandfather, Prince Philip, the late Duke of Edinburgh. Prince Philip was really the main force behind the modern royal family's work ethic, a man known for his fierce, uncompromising dedication to duty, a very strict code of personal discipline, and a total dislike for self-pity or showing any public emotion. He was someone who strongly believed that being royal simply meant showing up, doing the actual work, and staying completely out of the news. James was born while his grandfather was still actively shaping the general pace of royal life, and the two of them shared a highly private, warm bond within the quiet, expansive grounds of the Windsor estate. They were deeply connected by their mutual love for the quiet, rugged activities of country life, ranging from fly fishing in the cold waters of the River Dee to the challenging sport of carriage driving, a classic pastime that Prince Philip famously loved and passed down directly to both James and Lady Louise. Growing up in his grandfather's unique world during those formative years clearly left a lasting mark on James's personal character. Today, when people see young James standing with a quiet, unbothered dignity right up there on the palace balcony, they are not looking at a modern influencer or some celebrity desperate for attention. Instead, they are witnessing the true revival of Prince Philip's core philosophy, the deep belief that real strength lies in your actions rather than words, and that the best possible service anyone can offer to the crown is simply to stay steady, reliable, and completely silent in a noisy, chaotic world. By living these timeless values, James easily bridges the gap between a historic past and an uncertain future, showing the world that the monarchy remains strong. The real, long-term significance of James, the Earl of Wessex, in the modern journey of the British royal family, is not about some sudden promotion to a high office, but how he perfectly embodies royal survival. Through the centuries, the House of Windsor has survived the collapse of massive empires, major global wars, and these bitter family feuds, mostly because the family knows exactly how to lock doors and protect its own, while quietly, ruthlessly cutting loose anyone who walks away. Long royal history has never really been kind to the loudest voices, or those trying to trade ancient duty for the quick, volatile high of modern celebrity. Instead, the crown has always had to rely on the quiet, steady figures who get it. They know the family line only survives when you kill your ego and put the palace first. As the roar of the Royal Air Force jets dies down over London, and the massive crowds start to melt away from the gates of Buckingham Palace, that shot of young James standing tall right next to the Princess of Wales, it shows you exactly how they plan to survive. At just 18 years old, with decades of private life and public service still ahead of him, James is shaping up to be the ultimate modern, down-to-earth, yet deeply traditional gentleman. He managed to shrug off the crushing weight of his royal birthright by choosing not to use the fancy titles he has a legal right to, walking the same quiet path as his sister, Lady Louise. By choosing to focus on a normal career and his university studies, while still being right there, standing by his family during massive, historic national moments, he gives Prince William a perfect working model, a leaner, far more efficient royal family. Let us be clear, James is not replacing anyone, and you would completely misunderstand who he is if you think he is being groomed to fill the empty space left by the Duke of Sussex. Instead, he did something far more important for their future. He completely changed the game. He has shown everyone that real nobility is found in the quiet corners of carrying the load together, in backing your family when nobody is looking, and in the incredible power of keeping your mouth shut. In a family where every single word gets overanalyzed for hidden drama, and any small grudge quickly becomes a global headline. This young guy who never asks for a thing, who refuses to hunt for the cameras, and who just shows up to stand right by the future king. When it counts, he is easily the most valuable weapon the royal family has right now. Whether they planned it this way or he just grew up incredibly normal, James, the Earl of Wessex, is the one who keeps on showing up, proving that in the messy, long history of the royal family, quiet loyalty will always matter so much more than any